What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Barefoot Garage Side B. Dan, what are we here to do?
We're about to take the Nautitruck home. It's time to go back to the Barefoot Garage.
It's time to bring our first project and our love back to the garage. The Nautitruck is coming home to the new shop. It's going to be ripping. It's going to be at some events coming up soon. We'll tell you guys about. So for now, we got to get this thing started, get it on the trailer, and haul it back.
Crazy, right?
All right, Nautitruck is getting a little juice from a cheater class car here in the Subaru. There she sits. It's been around the yard a couple of times, but we are gonna see if this baby will start, and we are gonna load her up. So let's see if there's some life in it, or if it's gonna need to be towed all the way out by a Subaru. Make sure it's out of gear. It sounds so bad. All right, the old girl's loaded up. We're heading back to the shop. We're gonna get this thing back in excellent condition. All right, guys, the Nautitruck is home. I got a hole right here for the Nautitruck. We'll move this. So here is the plan. I'm standing in the driveway. The Nautitruck is way over there. We're gonna drag it to about here, wash it, pressure wash it, drag it to about here, clean all the junk out, and then push it into the shop kind of at this general angle. So there's really not that much to do. Like the brakes work, the gearbox work, we're gonna do clutch hydraulics, we're gonna do probably air clean the carburetor, carb spacer, like just tune-up stuff. We got to get a new battery, and I may need to rewire a little bit of it. So that's the plan. So we're going to take the tractor, drag the Nautitruck, clean it, drag it, push it, pull it, whatever, get in here, because the battery's dead, it won't start. It does run, but I don't have enough battery to get it to start. So that's the plan. Let's get to it. So here is roughly the plan. There's the Nautitruck. This is where it's gonna go. I'm gonna get in there and crank the wheels, and I'm gonna go put the loader on the tractor, and I'm gonna kind of just bump it, bump it, bump it. I haven't measured this, but I'm pretty sure from here to there is enough room, especially if I poke the nose way up in there. This may surprise some of you, but the engine is in the front, and that's where we're gonna be doing most of the work, is up there. So let's give it a shot. Back in the garage. I should say in the garage, because it never was in the garage before. When we built this last time, the truck nor the boat ever went inside the shop at my previous house. We basically just built it in the driveway, literally in the driveway. So I'll tell a little bit more of that story later, but as you can see, we are in, but as you can also see, there's a lot of wildlife and plants in here. So we're gonna give it a good clean out. I basically just need to be able to get in there without getting bitten by something or knowing that I'm gonna fall through the floor. So clean more, and then we'll talk about what's happening with the Nautitruck. Nautitruck is in the shop with the doors shut. We did have to push it in and scoot a little bit, so not a big deal. Took it outside, cleaned it, pushed it inside, took the battery out, pushed it back outside, pressure washed the inside, drilled some drain holes, which I don't know why we didn't drill drain holes before, but A little quick history lesson on the Nautitruck if you've not been here since the beginning, which is almost 2 years for the YouTube channel. I have a friend who is my co-pilot in the Nautitruck, and he was like, you gotta make videos about this. You gotta make videos about this. And he just one night goes, stand next to the truck and say your name and talk about the Nautitruck. And so we did. So if you go back to the very beginning, which I'll put a link to, you can see what this was built as. So I won't say cut some corners, but we had a lot of limitations when this happened. We did get the boat for free. For those of you who are worried about it being a savable boat, there was nothing savable about it. There was no trailer, there was no paperwork, the floor was completely gone, the trans was locked, the motor was locked, and it was already 60 over. There was no paperwork. Like, it had a lot of negatives for it, but it's perfect for what we needed because it was free, close, and ruined, so we could ruin it even further. So we bought a 86 F-150 that ran, which, to be honest, we never got it to run on the 1-barrel carburetor, last year carburetor for this cook. So it's got an Offenhauser intake and a Holley Street Avenger. I think it's like a 670 carburetor. And so we are going to go through it and do a few things to it now. And then in the long term, we're going to address some of the problems we had in 2020. The limitations were, when we built this, was between March and June of 2020. So the metal yard was closed. There were times when Home Depot and Lowe's and Ace were closed. So we were literally building this with what we could get. So there are pieces of metal under there that are brackets from something else out of my scrap pile. We had to mail order some 1-inch square tubing to frame out the floor in the back. I met some people like at a rest stop for parts in Georgia. So we had to do a lot of things that we would have done maybe differently if we had access to everything we needed. So seats are reused, back seat is out of the truck, gas tank's out of the truck, but we had to do what we needed to do. So some of this is just what we could get during that time. Thankfully now we have access to everything again. So I'm charging the battery. We're gonna see if that's gonna come back to life. If it doesn't, we're under 3 years, so I hope we can get a warranty on that. But we're gonna address some of the problems the Nautitruck had, and we have been storing up a bunch of new parts for this build. And so let's talk about things that weren't really great when we ran this thing in 2020 and talk about how we're gonna address those problems for the 2022 events. Okay, problem number one. The Nautitruck had to be pull started every time except the first time. So once it got warm, it didn't want to start. I think we may have a timing problem. I've changed the starter solenoid. We've changed that cable. We're going to move the battery. So I'll show you what we're doing here. The starter solenoid is down here. The starter's real close. We are going to add starter heat shield to see if it's getting heat soaked. And I'm going to readjust the timing. I don't know why. The balancer on this engine has 2 sets of timing marks. I have set it to the best of my knowledge. I have had one of these engines before, but it's one of the later ones that was carbureted. It wasn't fuel injected yet, and so it's not for sure, but I think we may have too much timing on the front end, and so it cranks really slow, so we had to pull start it every time, which was absolutely sketchy and like not awesome. I want to be able to flip the switch, hit the button, and cruise. So battery is going to get fresh, relocated, fresh cable, maybe a fresh solenoid, heater blanket on the starter, and we're going to take care of the timing. That's the biggest problem. Problem number 2 was cooling. If you were moving ice cold, like 150 degrees, no problem. The Nautitruck has a Ford 300 straight 6. There is no radiator up here. We are using electrical conduit right here to run to our rear mounted radiator down here. The stock radiator is down here. So when you stop, it vents through the cap and it lets out like a gallon or 2 of your coolant, which is a lot in this system. And so we've changed the cap a couple of times. So first thing, we're gonna do a coolant recovery tank. On the road, we had to rewire the fan from push to pull just because of the way that the airflow was working. And while my batteries were charging so I could film this video, I went ahead and Swiss cheesed up the side here, and I cut out the top of the hood so we genuinely do have some ram air as we drive down the road. So we're gonna put as much cold air into this thing as we can, but the goal is to be able to sit still with it going. So if you were driving it and you forgot to turn the fan on, cooked. You have to stop, wait for it to vent all the coolant, wait for it to cool down, fill it back up with coolant, pull start it, and then remember to turn the fan on. So that's kind of the biggest two things. I need to be able to start on the button, it needs to be able to stay cool all the time, or at least stay cool in a reasonable sense. The third thing that was a problem is as it warms up, it gets very hard to get in gear. I know from being under the dash that the little pivot arm on the hydraulic clutch master is like super walled out. It's like got a 1/4 of an inch of play. So I have clutch slave, clutch master, clutch line. I want that to be super easy. Here's our coolant recovery tank. The other thing that didn't work well is I bought the cheapest, because this is really all we could get, phenolic resin carb spacer, because the carb linkage hits the manifold, so I had to space it up. This thing cracked on installation. I don't think it was tight enough. You can see the witness marks on the gaskets, but it was backfiring, it was popping. So I have somehow an NOS Spectre aluminum 1-inch spacer, which should give us more ponies, and new gaskets and new studs that are not like 13mm or some weird deal. So we're gonna clean that carburetor up. I don't think it's too bad. I'm gonna brake clean it off. I may pull off the primaries and just take a look at it. I have no idea if we are in the secondaries, how it's jetted or anything like that, because it doesn't really matter. So those are the things that need to be done to the Nautitruck in the short term. In the long term, what we may look at doing is moving our electrical system, which is the battery down low and that ammo can there. Surprisingly, that ammo can kept everything inside in really good shape. The horn needs a relay because it blew as soon as we hit it when we wired it with no relay. And so either we're gonna make a little bit of a dash up here, or maybe put the battery here, or put a little panel over there on the other side of the steering column, something like that. Lastly, not as big of a problem, but it was a problem. This air cleaner and the hose and system we had is too much of a restriction. So for a couple extra ponies as well, we got a nice 14-inch chrome air filter. Under the hood, there's really not a lot of water moving around, and it doesn't float anymore, much to people's surprise. And so we are gonna run a new air filter. I may do some kind of a shield or a pre-filter or something on it to kind of keep some of the big water out, but generally we're just gonna try not to put the boat that far in the water because the motor sits up pretty high. So that was really causing some poor running issues, and it backfired and it blew off the heater duct hose that I was using on my homemade carburetor hat, because carburetor hats are really, really, really expensive. So I made this from scratch, and it wasn't great. So that's what the Nautitruck needs. We're gonna get started on a couple of these things. We gotta get a battery and kind of get that back in there to make sure that we are turning over, fix the starting issue, fix the clutch issue, and then we'll start putting a couple of small parts back. So now that we got it back in the shop and we have a plan of action, I'm gonna tackle that carburetor. You guys don't need to watch me rebuild a 4-barrel carburetor because I've never done it before and I'm not a good reference. So I am gonna get started on a couple of these things, and we are gonna check back in once we get a battery, and we're gonna get started trying to turn it back over, figure out the starting problem, and then we'll probably tackle the clutch hydraulics. So that's going to be all for the Barefoot Garage tonight. Stay tuned to the Nautitruck project because we are excited to have it back. It's a really fun and wacky thing to have back on the channel. And so we will have this out at events in the coming weeks, and I'll tell you what those events are shortly. So stay tuned to the Barefoot Garage right here on YouTube and at Barefoot Garage Jacks over on Instagram if you want to know what's happening with the Nautitruck. See you guys.